What's up everybody, Jamison Redding here with the Road Trip Angler. In this video, I'm going to be continuing all of my motor reviews with the Newport NK300. This is going to be my first experience with a Newport motor. Before I jump into this, I've also done a review of the Bixby K1 kayak motor, and I've done a review of the Travel Ultralight from Torqeedo, which is also an 1100 watt motor like the Newport here. The Newport actually says 1300 watts, so they're going to be very similar. If you'd like to see those reviews, be sure to check them out. In addition to that, I'll be doing a side-by-side comparison with all three of those motors and kind of where they fit in the market. I've done all these reviews on the same boat, so big shout out to Bonafide for sending me the PWR 129. It is a boat designed for kayak motors, which makes it really easy to be able to swap these motors out and test them all out. Plus, I think testing these motors on the same boat, same hull shape, the same amount of weight in the kayak is really going to give me the most accurate testing conditions to be able to compare these motors. Be sure to check out those other videos to see how they stack up against each other and which one might be right for you. First thing I'm going to do is get this bad boy unboxed. I give a big shout out to Z-Pro. They did provide this 36 amp battery. It's 1152 watt hours, so pretty close to about an hour at full throttle, which is similar to what I get with the other motors that I've tested, like the Torqeedo. All right, looks like we have an installation kit, controller, a mounting bracket, battery quick disconnect. With the NK300, you've got your battery cable that plugs into the motor itself. The wire that comes in the actual motor kit will connect to this, and then this will connect to the battery, allow me to quickly unplug the battery without having to remove the entire motor setup. It also came with the tools to install this, which is pretty cool that you get the wrench and everything that you need. The throttle, you have 2 keys, a spare, and then one with a lanyard as well. You also have the data cable that will connect to the motor from the throttle. One of the really cool things that is unique to this motor is that you're getting the cables to run the foot control steering with. Now, I don't need those because the PWR is already rigged for foot control steering, but I like the fact that it comes with everything you need to be able to connect those. This is a steel cable, so not the synthetic or Spectra cord that a lot of us use. You get this for the reverse lock, which is nice. It's aluminum anodized, and you get the lift handle as well, along with a couple of pulleys to give you that mechanical advantage when you're raising and lowering the motor. You're going to get the lift cable and the reverse lock cable. This is basically like a paracord type material. I'm assuming this is just some extra cordage. The mounting bracket, which goes to the 4 bolt hole pattern that you have already on the PWR and a lot of other fishing kayaks. Anything that has that micro power pole 4 bolt hole pattern footprint is going to accept that bracket very easily. Mounting hardware here with the tools to be able to put those on with. You've got some bolts if you need to through bolt, and this is going to be the lift arm that goes onto the motor itself to be able to raise and lower it. And then you've got the motor itself, which already has the steering triangle in place. It just needs to be adjusted, and then you can adjust these as well to control where the motor needs to be set as far as up and down. These are the things that I have to install this motor. The next thing I'm going to do is get everything mounted up. I've actually got the old mount on here from the Torqeedo review, so I got to pull that mount off. We're going to swap it out for the Newport and get this motor installed. If you'd like to see how to install a motor on a PWR, I actually have a walkthrough video of how I rigged my PWR, which will show you how I installed that motor. And it's going to be pretty much the same to install this Newport motor, to install the K1 motor, and to install the Torqeedo. Before I get into installing this on the boat and taking it to the water, I thought it would be good to go through the specs for this particular motor. The power is 1300 watts or a 3 horsepower equivalent. It's got a 36 volt DC input voltage, so you really want to run a 36 volt battery if you can. 37 amps. The motor weighs 25.5 pounds, and the external battery is 36 volts. 40 decibel sound level on water, so we'll see how quiet that is, because I'm sure most of us aren't out there measuring decibels, and your minimum battery recommendation is 36 volts DC, 30 amp hour. It also needs to be a lithium battery. Now, some of their other motor options will let you use a regular deep cycle battery, but the NK180 Pro and the NK300 both are going to require lithium. The NK180 being a 24 volt system, and this being a 36 volt system. So you're going to have to purchase that battery separate. Newport does actually offer their own battery setup for a different price point, but let's talk about the price of this setup that I have here. The motor itself comes in at $1,199, and again, that is going to come with everything with the exception of the battery and the battery quick disconnect kit that I bought separately. So when you add those things to it, the battery is going to run you really anywhere from, I would say, $750 to $1,000. Their 36 volt 40 amp hour battery is $999. You can also buy their charger for another $200, and you can buy an extra throttle if you need it for $40 if you want to be able to move this around and not have to move your throttle from location to location. Putting the things that you would need to power this, including the battery, the quick disconnect, along with the motor all together in the cart, on their website, it comes out to $2,043.99. So approximately everything that you have here, that's about what you're looking to spend. We'll get you the power that you need, the battery quick disconnect, and the NK300. I would say right off the bat, that's one of the advantages to this motor, is that you can power it with whichever battery you choose. You don't have to have their proprietary battery, and let's say out in the field you had a battery issue, you could just go pick up a 36 volt lithium battery at probably Bass Pro Shop or another store that would carry that and be back in business pretty quick, not relying on that battery. One of the disadvantages to that is you don't have all that battery technology, so I'll be curious to see what all translates onto the screen here in the actual throttle, because I'm used to seeing my accurate speed, my accurate range. I'm hoping that I get my watt draw and my battery percentage on screen. We'll see what that display looks like very shortly. Everything is done, but I walked through how I rigged everything. Again, the boat was already pre-rigged with the steering, which is the primary thing that you have to do with any of these motors, is figure out how you're going to steer them, especially if you're using foot control steering. Now, some of them come with their own proprietary battery and their own cable, so it's as easy as just plugging it in. This was as easy as connecting a couple of screws to the Z Pro battery that I'm using and running that wire. You could wire this inside the boat and actually make it a little bit more permanent. I'm leaving it on top of the boat so that I can move it from boat to boat very easily, and it's easy for me to switch from one motor to the other as I'm doing all these tests. So you see, you've got basically three categories here. The voltage for the actual battery, and then at the top also you've got your battery level. As that goes down, those bars will disappear, and that will let me know approximately how much battery percentage I have left. This is your percentage of throttle, and this is your watt draw. So as I bump this, you can see I'm using 2% of my throttle, and I'm turning about 4 watts. Now, this is not going to display speed because there is no GPS built in anywhere in this. You also have, if you can see this, there's an N. That N lets me know that I'm in neutral. R for reverse, and forward is the F, obviously. I don't see the mode button doing anything. Maybe someone in the comments knows what this button does. So you know your battery type, you know how many volts your battery is at. Again, I'm a 36 volt battery. That's pretty common for it to be a little high. You've got your percentage of throttle and how many watts you're doing. And you can calculate your range if you know your speed by the watt draw and how much battery life you have. You also have your kill switch, always wear that. The other thing about this throttle that I think is unique to it is how short this is. The Torqeedo throttle comes out, goes all the way across and down on that travel ultralight. This one is shortened, and a lot of people used to shorten their Torqeedo throttles just to keep it from hanging up when you're getting in and out of the boat, or hanging up on fishing line or on straps or anything like that. So this is going to be clean, it's not going to catch anything. It still gives you enough purchase to be able to grab that and throttle up. I have utilized a YakAttack mount that was designed for the Torqeedo throttle, but it does fit this NK300 throttle. You'll see the information or the data cable that's connected here. I just have that ran under the seat, tucked under the battery, ran back through the tank well, and I'll put my black pack on top of this and connect it to the motor back here. You could clean all that up and run it inside the hole if you preferred. I just wanted to do it very quickly so that I could do this test, and I want to have the ability to move this back and forth. You'll see that I have the quick disconnect tucked in right here behind the seat as well, along with the plug for that. Let's see if I can get it out here. along with the plug for that. So this is going to be where I would unplug my battery from the cable that is running to the motor. Again, you could wire a plug here or anywhere on this boat. You also have the removable plates in behind this battery. So you could actually wire yourself a plug or even just a pass-through with that wire coming out so that you could quickly connect that, and it would be very, very simple to do. Running that cable along those troughs that are in the bottom of that tank wheel all the way out on the other side, you'll see that this plug here, which came on the motor already pre-wired, you just simply plug that in and you're ready to go there. This is where the steering controls and the rudder lift and lower cable were ran in the PWR from the start. I merely lengthened these cables to be able to utilize the steering on the steering triangle of the different motors that I've been hooking up. This is Spectra cable. It's very strong, it's very slick. I swapped all the hardware that I was using with the previous motors that I've tested out with the hardware that came with the Newport because I wanted to be able to utilize it and test it. So you got a couple of these pulleys, I'm only using one. I'm using these little carabiners and hooking up that pulley system, that Spectra cable to raise and lower it to the lift arm here. Down here on the steering triangle, you see I also utilize their carabiners, which are locking. They have a little screw lock on them, and that Spectra cord that I already had installed. Theirs does come with that slick stainless cable. The Newport motor comes with that. It does not come with any tubing. So if you were gonna run that through the boat and your boat didn't have cable or steering components already rigged in it, you would probably need to pick up some tubing to be able to run through your boat to run those cables inside the boat, or you could simply run them on top of the boat and pick up some different eyelets. But this is a pretty simple install for me. I merely put the plate on the 4-bolt hole pattern. So the adapter plate went on first. I put the lift arm on. I adjusted this to get the height that I needed to get approximately where the motor needs to be as far as depth goes to keep it from cavitating. And I kind of know where that needs to be from previous installs. So I got all that hooked up. I got my cables hooked up, ran my power to the Z Pro battery, and I ran my throttle. So we are actually ready to test all this out. Made it to the water with the Newport NK300, and we're going to put it to the test. Pretty calm conditions. We have a tiny bit of breeze, about the same as it's been with the other motors that I've tested. I'm on the same body of water that I have tested the Bixby and the Torqeedo motor on, so when I do that comparison video, it's going to be a very exact same conditions really. Let's get to it. First thing I've got here is the key. I've got that attached to my life jacket. You can see that I'm at a full charge here. I'm putting out 39.6 volts. Again, I have a 36 volt battery, but when it's fully charged, that's pretty normal for it to put out a few extra volts there. Should be around a full hour at full throttle is what I should get. So I'm gonna drop this in the water. This is displayed as soon as you plug in the unit, but I don't actually have the power turned on, so I'll push that. You hear a beep, then you'll see the percentage come up and the watt draw come up. And then of course I've already dropped down one of my batteries because I have had this battery plugged in for a little while. So I'm not fully 100% charged, but pretty close. I have dropped down significantly on the battery life, and I've only been on the throttle full speed for a minute. .45% throttle, 405 watts or so, 403 watts. We're at 2 watts. Let's put the hammer down. All right, you can see I'm drawing just under 1300 watts, so right at the full speed or full power that the motor can put out. And with that, I'm running 6.6 miles an hour. Again, that's at full speed. One of the things that I do like is that you can tell what your percentage of throttle you're at and your watt draw. That's going to really help you when it comes to calculating your range, because if you know how many watt hours your batteries should be, you should be able to calculate how far you can go at different wattages, so you can really kind of plan ahead and dial in the amount of range that you need for a day on the water. I'm at 50% throttle right now, running 5.1 miles per hour. The steering feels just like it really should for any other motor that I've tested on the water. It's responsive. I've got it connected to the steering on my PWR, so it's right in line with the Bixby and the Torqeedo that I've tested before, so steering is great. I like that it's a direct drive motor. That means that when I give it throttle, it's immediately going to respond to that throttle, and it also keeps it a lot quieter. It's virtually silent on the water. You can hear just a little bit of motor noise, but really quiet. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with the whole setup. It would take me some time to figure out, you know, motor and battery range and how far I can actually go on a full charge on this battery. When I hit the water, I was showing full bars on the battery. It's a 30 amp hour battery. Again, it's rated for like 1100 watt hours. So theoretically at wide open throttle, I should have an hour of runtime. And if you'll notice, I'm already down to 1 bar on the battery level here, which is right there. And it was all the way to the top when I got on the water. So just from running wide open for a few minutes, that has dropped way down. So I think this is, you know, kind of the bare minimum what they recommend. I should be getting a full hour or close to a full hour at full throttle based on the math, but I'm not sure that I would do that. It's going to take some time to really test that, and I'm probably going to kill a battery in the process. You can get a bigger battery, and that is one of the things that I also like about this setup, is that you have the ability to pick out a larger battery and pick out your own battery brand. I think the next thing that I'm going to check out here is durability. I'm going to hit the same log that I've hit in every one of my motor videos and see how this motor stacks up as far as hitting something in the water that you didn't know was there. Ran it across some logs and it just kept going, kicked up like it was supposed to, went back down. When I get to the boat ramp, I'll check the prop and everything and see if it did any damage, but the motor kept going. It just kicked up and went back down. I ran over more than I realized were there because I've muddied the water up as I've been doing circles around this area, and had it at wide open throttle. At one point I was not going wide open speeds, but definitely had it at wide open throttle. So far I've been pleasantly impressed with it. You've got reverse. I rarely ever hook up reverse lock, and I don't think I've had reverse lock hooked up on any of the motor test videos that I've done, mostly because I don't want to have it get locked and I don't like extra lines being on there, but it does come in handy if you're needing to actually hold position. You've got quite a bit of wind or current and you're trying to hold position. I am impressed right off the bat with the speed. I'm getting 6.6 to 6.7, which is very commendable in this boat, and the top speed that I've actually seen it go with the motor has been 6.7. On this body of water, which is a calm lake, tiny bit of wind out here today, but no real current, is, you know, right there where it should be. You can see there that we've got 3 bars now, and it could just be that we're running lithium power. I'm not sure that your percentage levels are very accurate. Lithium is known for basically going until it runs out and then it just cuts off. I've got lithium batteries on my trolling motor on my skiff, and you know the light will be green on there letting me know that I've got full charge, and when it turns red you're pretty much done. It's not a warning like, hey, you've got 25% battery life left. If it turns red, that battery's cutting off, and it's not going to just slow down like lead acid batteries would, or regular deep cycle batteries, which tend to get slower and slower and slower until they die. Lithium is pretty much full delivery of power until it's not, because they're designed in a way that once they drop below a certain voltage, they're just going to cut off. I want to see what happens. I mean, all the other motors that have some kind of kill switch, they die when you pull the kill switch, right? And this one does the same. And it also has a beep to let you know that the battery or the kill switch has been pulled. A lot of times I'll knock it with the paddle or stand up and forget that that's there. So when you put it back on, even though the throttle is engaged at 30%, it won't come back on. So I'm going to go to neutral and then re-engage, which is exactly what I thought would happen. So that works good. We're going to head back to the boat ramp though and just get off the water and go through my thoughts on this from the standpoint of who I think it's for and all those different things. Well, I'm off the water now, and I want to quickly go through what my thoughts are on this motor. Overall, I was really pleasantly impressed by the speed, how quiet it was, how responsive the throttle was. But as far as installation goes, it's pretty typical, I would say, of what you would get with any stern mount motor. If your kayak doesn't already have pre-ran rudder controls like this Bonafide PWR did, you would have to run those rudder controls or that foot control steering. So you might need a few things in order to custom fit it to your kayak. Durability is something that I like to test, and I really think that over time I could get a better assessment of that durability, especially around saltwater. But what I can tell you just from the limited amount of time that I've had on the water with this product is that it's gonna hold up to the beating and banging on the bottom. Movable or replaceable skeg here on the bottom. This is also what I saw in some of the other motors as well, but there's 3 screws there that you can pull out and replace this skeg because it's likely gonna wear down over time if you're dragging it across a rough or rocky bottom. Also, if you hit something, it is a plastic skeg. This is an aluminum housing and metal from here up, but this skeg itself is like a nylon reinforced plastic type material, very similar to what I've seen in the other motors that I've tested, and you can replace that if you break it, and that's gonna protect that prop. The prop is also nylon. It's got a little bit of flex to it. I think it's gonna hold up well, but you know, if you hit something hard enough, it is plastic and it could potentially break. But again, it's something that would be very easy to replace. All the cables and stuff feel very durable. The connections are clean, they're simple. One thing I would say is that you are exposed to the elements with these connections. They are not watertight. The lithium battery here, as you can see on top, the connections are exposed. So if you're gonna be, especially around salt water, it's probably not a bad idea to treat that with some like dielectric grease or something just to keep that from corroding and keep those clean, so that you have a good connection. Because this is an off-the-shelf connector, it gives you a lot of versatility in how you rig this product throughout the boat. You can actually put plugs on the boat, so you just plug it right in. You don't have to have those cables laying on top of the boat. But time will tell how that holds up in the elements when you're, say, fishing in rain, or you have a lot of rough water and it's coming over the boat, or especially if you're in salt water. Salt water and electronics tend to fight each other quite frequently. Other than that, I think it's going to be pretty durable. One thing that I would love to see from Newport is a metal or aluminum steering triangle. That is something that Torqeedo has implemented in their newest motor. And while it seems simple enough, I know from experience that especially when the motor is stowed, if you're not paying attention and you put too much pressure on one of those foot controls, that you could snap this. Not typically going to happen when the motor is deployed and you're actually steering, but a lot of times when it's stowed, you're pulling on this at a different angle and it could potentially break. There are aftermarket options for this, so it's not the end of the world, but this is a plastic steering triangle and it could be a failure point. So you may want to look into those aftermarket options at some point. I did hit some wood while I was out there at a reasonable amount of speed, and I can see some little bit of bang up on the bottom here and a little bit of wear where I drug that on the bottom, but that's to be expected. And I promise you that if I use this motor more, I'm going to be wearing that bottom piece out and eventually replacing it, but that is what it's designed to do. When it comes to versatility, really any specifically designed fishing kayak, you're probably gonna be just fine and able to rig this up. Some are gonna be easier than others, like this PWR from Bonafide, again, because it is designed to take a motor. But a lot of kayaks are moving that direction now. So it's a lot easier to find a kayak, if you don't already have one, that you can mount this motor to. Or if you already do have a kayak, it's probably not going to be that difficult to figure out how to get this mounted on there. It does come with hardware, so you can through bolt it if you have a flat area on the back of your kayak and you don't have that 4-bolt hole pattern. But I think as far as versatility goes, as long as you're looking at a modern fishing kayak, more than likely you're going to have that 4-bolt hole pattern on the back. That's for the micro power pole that will also work with the mount that comes with this. This is designed for modern fishing kayaks, and the mount that it comes with is designed for boats that have that micro power pole 4-bolt hole pattern, or at least boats that have a flat area on the back or an adapter that would take that mounting system. Now I want to talk about speed. This is something that I was pleasantly surprised. I don't know if I would say pleasantly surprised or just impressed overall with. I was able to get 6.7 miles per hour on this. I saw that before with the Torqeedo, but sustained 6.6, so this is a hair quicker. I did touch 6.8. There was a little bit of wind and I did have the wind at my back, but I did average between that 6.6 and touching the 6.8. So I'm gonna call it 6.7 miles per hour is what I was able to get on the PWR. Again, I weigh around 230 pounds. I did have my tackle. I did not have the power pole micros on the back, mostly because I didn't want them to interfere with being able to shoot the motor as I was turning and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I had a pretty decent load on the Kayak, and the same load that I've had on the Kayak when I've tested it with other motors. So I was impressed. That was at the 1300 watts. I was showing on the readout that I was at 100% throttle. I was pushing 1300 watts, and I was using my Lowrance screen there to determine the speed, and the GPS there has been proven to be pretty accurate when I've compared it to other motors and to the GPS on my phone. Anything over 6.5 miles an hour in a Kayak is moving. So great speed and right where it should be for a 3 horsepower equivalent or 1300 watt motor. The last thing I want to talk about is, who is this for? This is a serious motor. I mean, one of the biggest on the market's at 1300 watts. The next biggest is 1100 watts. So actually it's the most watts of any motor that I've tested. I think this motor is for that serious kayak angler that wants to be able to reach out further, go faster, and cover more water. So tournament anglers and just kayak anglers that want to maximize their time on the water. Without a doubt, you are going to make more casts if your hands are free. And foot control steering on a kayak with a motor is going to allow you to cover a lot more water and make a lot more casts and keep that line in the water a lot more often. So if you're a serious kayak angler, very much like I've talked about the other motors, I think this is something you should consider. Now I'm going to be doing a full comparison video between this, the Bixby motor, and the new Travel Ultralight from Torqeedo, and talking about where these fit. And if you're thinking about getting a motor for your kayak, I really think that video will be worthwhile, because those are the 3 best options that I believe are out there, and they each have a little something different. It's not just the pricing, it's not just the size or the wattage or the speed. There's a lot more to these motors and the technology that's in these motors, and I think each one has its place in the market, and I'm gonna do my best to share with you where those motors fit. So be sure to check out that comparison video now that I have all these motor reviews done. I have some more motors to review, and I also want to get into some of the bow mount options for kayaks. So if you're enjoying this content, be sure to subscribe and drop me a comment in what you would like to see next, or if you have any questions about this product or any of the other ones that I reviewed. And as always, thanks for watching.